In this video, I will take you through a work week with me. I'll show you how I block my calendar for the week, make adjustments to the calendar as the week goes on, and keep track of what needs to be done in Notion. If you're a returning visitor, welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Odile and I am a lecturer. On my page, you will find resources to help you become more efficient in your planning if you're a student or an academic, as well as tools to help you prepare the best possible academic and other types of documents. Let's dive in. Before we start, I want to mention the planning tools I use. I use a combination of Notion, Google Calendar, and Outlook to do my planning. I supplement these with a Calendly subscription which my students use to book consultations. I usually do my planning on a Sunday, where I block out my calendar based on what is coming up in the week. I have to mention at this point that Sunday is the day for planning minute details of the upcoming week, but my overall planning takes place over a larger time horizon as I slot projects and tasks into my Notion workflow. I already had a few standing items in my calendar for the week. These include school pickups, a slot to check applications, and admin slots on a Monday and Friday. I then have an overview of the projects I am actively working on based on what is on my Notion page. Within each project, I have tasks which have an assigned due date. Tasks without a due date sit in my inbox, so whenever I create a new project, I have to add tasks and due dates to avoid tasks hovering about in my inbox. There are a few things I need to consider this week. The first is an examination of a master's research report that I have been sitting on for at least a month and a half. I knew that when it was sent to me that I would not be able to finish it by the end of May, which was the originally requested due date. So I asked for an extension to the end of June. But I'm already halfway through June and haven't started reading it. So this is urgent now. The other two items are conference presentations, which I have coming up in the last week of June and the first week of July. I have to finalize my analyses on these to conclude my presentations. One of them is a poster presentation which is due this coming week, so I have to move quickly. So moving on to my Google Calendar, this is what a typical empty week would look like for me. Certain spaces have already been filled. I already have at least 2 student consultations scheduled using Calendly. I have my school pickups blocked out, primarily to avoid colleagues and myself scheduling meetings in my calendar at that time. The brown slots are what someone who has access to my Outlook calendar at work would see, but I'm the only person who has access to my Google Calendar. I have 2 admin slots each week. These are standing items to help me avoid piling up admin tasks. And I also have a group supervision session already scheduled for this week. I also have a few additional items like an appointment to replace my ID card, so I need to work around these. Bearing in mind that I'm prioritizing the 3 urgent and big items, my 2 conference presentations and the examination which is due at the end of this month. To help me with my scheduling, I also tend to look at what I have coming up in the next 7 days in my task manager in Notion. All tasks which have dates assigned for the next 7 days will be listed on this page. Lastly, I look at my Training Peaks calendar. My coach usually loads the week schedule the Thursday before, so by the time Sunday comes around, I know what to expect for the week. Luckily, I have 3 weeks of recovery following the comrades, so my training calendar is not looking too intense for this week. But I have to schedule it nonetheless to make sure I have enough time to slot in my training and my work commitments for the week. Using the information in Training Peaks and my Notion Task Manager, I can start slotting in items around the standing items in my Google Calendar. I like to color code my Google Calendar. This is to ensure that I'm not spending a large amount of time on items which will not move me closer to my primary long-term goals. I talk a bit about this in a previous video where I distinguish between maker and manager time. The link to this video is in the description below. My most important tasks are research related and I color code them in yellow. My conference presentations and the last data analysis tasks related to them will be in yellow. My conference poster is due on Wednesday this week, so I made sure that my entire research slot on Monday is dedicated to that poster and the first slot on Tuesday too. The rest of the research slots will be for my other presentation. I try my best to schedule at least 3 hours a day for research. It is not always possible, but given that this is my primary activity in relation to my long-term goals, I try to be very stringent on the days that I do have time. Anything related to student supervision, examination, and related tasks are in blue. One of my outstanding items this week is the examination I referred to earlier, so I'm setting aside a few slots for this. I had a few admin tasks which required dedicated slots. I slotted them into days which would allow me to meet their deadlines. These are in grey. For my ID card application, I slotted in travel time which I did not need for anything else as I was working from home this week. After the blocking, I still had a few empty slots. Those are booked in my Outlook calendar. It just takes some time to sync to my iPad sometimes, but I can see these on my phone. With my blocking done, I could mark this recurring task off my to-do list in Notion and get the week going. On Monday, I got straight into it. I had to finalize my data for my poster, which was due on Wednesday. At the beginning of the year, I promised myself I would start learning how to do graphs in Stata. And while I started with bar graphs early in the year, I hadn't mastered line graphs yet, and I didn't have time this week, so I was back to doing them in Excel. I also started the outline of the poster in Canva using the size guidelines provided on the conference website and a few tips I found on another website. The link to this website is posted in the description below. By the end of the day, I had a rough outline of the poster, I started reading the examination report, and I got the admin tasks out of the way which I had slotted into my calendar, so I could tick these off the list in Notion. Tuesday morning came around, and before I continued work on my poster, I realized I would need more time for this. Because it was due the next day, there was no point in starting work on the presentation if the poster wasn't done. So I moved things around a bit in my calendar to make more time to work on the poster. Luckily for me, my student cancelled our 45-minute consultation, so I gained an additional 45 minutes that day without needing to sacrifice time on any other item I had planned for the day. I was also informed that books I had been waiting for got delivered to work and made plans to collect them on Wednesday and return some library books, given that I already had an appointment I needed to leave the house for. So I made additional changes to my Wednesday schedule to accommodate this collection and drop-off. This meant that I had no research time on Wednesday, but I figured my slots on Thursday and Friday would be sufficient. So on Tuesday, I continued on the poster, managed to do some data work for my presentation, and read the research report I was examining on Tuesday afternoon. By the end of the day, I had completed the poster and some data work for the presentation. Although I finalized my poster on Tuesday, I didn't manage to get my walk in. It was just too cold outside. So I moved that over to Wednesday morning and moved my Wednesday morning stretch to Wednesday afternoon. Wednesday was my day to finally leave the house. I dropped off my library books, collected my books that had been delivered, and then left to go to Home Affairs for my ID appointment. My appointment was at 11 a.m., but by 12 I had still been there. There were tons of people, which I suppose completely defeated the purpose of having an appointment. But at the end, I only managed to get out of there after 1 p.m. Luckily, I had read the report I was examining while waiting, because by the time I got home, it was almost time for my student consultation. I just had a brief moment to eat something and then jumped on my call, and then my group supervision session before leaving to do school pickup. I also got an email requesting that the conference presentation I was working on be submitted on Friday, which was a bit unexpected, but at least I managed to tick off the submitted poster from my to-do list. On Thursday morning, I did not manage my walk again and moved it to the afternoon in hopeful optimism, but I don't think I need to tell you how this winter walk story ended. With my conference poster now due the next day, I realized that I had to put my foot on the pedal in terms of my analysis and get on with just finishing the presentation already. I jumped on my morning meeting and then got to finalizing my analysis afterwards. I printed out my documents to take a closer look at the data and then finished reading the research report I was examining. Before my last meeting of the day, I checked if there were any master's applications which needed screening, as I do every Thursday afternoon, and then left for school pickup. I finally managed my walk on a very chilly and foggy Friday morning and then jumped straight into my conference presentation. Given that this presentation was due today, I was a bit stressed when my husband called me to say that school pickup was at 11 a.m. as it was the last day of school. This was slap bang in the middle of my research slot, and today's slot was very critical. I realized that I would need time to make up for the 11 a.m. pickup and decided to move everything down, given that it was no longer necessary to do an afternoon pickup. With my son at home, I managed to get the presentation fairly completed, managed to write up and submit my examination report, and get to a few admin items in the afternoon, despite a few interruptions. That evening, I continued working for an additional hour or so on the presentation and just had the conclusion outstanding. All in all, it was a good week. I managed to tick 2 big items off my list and get about 90% of the way with the last. Based on the work I did this week, I was able to tick a few things off my overdue list and move other work to future dates. But this is basically the life of an academic. A lot of unstructured time, which requires a lot of discipline and planning. If you enjoyed this video, remember to like it and subscribe for more.